Ashes of Earth. The end came not with fire, but with silence. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars and dreamed. They had built colonies on the moon, carved cities into Mars, and sent fleets of explorers into the black. Earth had united, at least on paper, under the fragile ban of the Terran Union. Its greatest minds focused on the promise of expansion. For the first time in history, war among nations seemed like a relic of the past. But the universe had never promised peace. They came without warning, vast silhouettes blotting out the sun, their ships spanning kilometers, bristling with weapons the likes of which no human eye had ever seen. The first orbital defense platforms were vaporized in seconds, their shields torn apart by beams of searing energy. The Terran fleet scrambled to respond, but even the most advanced human destroyers were as children's toys against the leviathans that fell upon them. The aliens did not broadcast demands. They did not open negotiations. They came with purpose, and that purpose was conquest. Cities burned as orbital strikes hammered Earth's surface. Whole continents disappeared under firestorms. The oceans boiled in places where weapons pierced too deep, and skies filled with ash. Within hours, Earth, the cradle of humankind, was broken. And yet, humanity was not extinct. Not yet. At the edge of the Sol system, a single warship ran. She was not finished, not truly. The TSV Revenant was meant to be the pride of the Union fleet, a battleship still half complete in the shipyards near Titan. Her hull was scarred with exposed plating, her weapons only partially integrated. Systems failed with alarming frequency, and the engineers joked she had more patchwork than steel. But when the attack came, she was all that remained. A skeleton crew had brought her online, dragging families, refugees, and broken remnants of the Terran Navy aboard as the shipyards fell. Engineers welded bulkheads shut while alarms screamed. Pilots slammed fighters into alien ships just to buy a few more minutes. When the Titan shipyards collapsed in fire, the Revenant leapt into the void, wounded but alive. She carried barely 1,000 souls. Soldiers, civilians, children, survivors. They were all that was left. In the silence of space, Captain Elias Vera stood at the shattered command deck, watching the glow of Earth through cracked viewports. It no longer looked like a world. The greens and blues of oceans and forests had been swallowed by fire. Cities were molten scars. The atmosphere choked with black. His second-in-command, Commander Lyra Anwin, whispered, "It's gone." Vera said nothing. He could not. A transmission crackled through broken comms. The Union Central Fleet Command, what was left of it, broadcast one final message. "This is Admiral Hahn of the Terran Union. Earth has fallen. All fleets destroyed. Survive if you can. Fight if you must. Humanity endures, not on Earth, but in you." Static, then silence. The bridge crew sat in stillness, listening to the faint hum of systems barely holding together. At last, Vera spoke. "Plot us a course out of Sol. Any direction. Just get us clear." The Revenant's engines groaned to life. The ship slid into the dark, leaving the corpse of Earth behind. Days bled into weeks. Life aboard the Revenant was harsh. Power was rationed. Oxygen scrubbers wheezed under the strain. The wounded filled improvised infirmaries, tended by overworked medics with dwindling supplies. Children cried in the corridors, their laughter long since silenced. The ship itself fought them at every turn. Systems flickered. Gravity plating failed. Half the weapons refused to fire. Food ran low, forcing hydroponic gardens to be carved into cargo bays. And yet, despite everything, the crew endured. In the mess hall, soldiers sat beside civilians. Engineers taught children to splice wires and patch conduits. Pilots who had lost their wings learned to repair drones. Humanity, broken, burned, bleeding, still refused to die, but the aliens hunted them. First came scouts, sleek vessels slipping through the void, following the faint trail of human engines. The Revenant barely escaped, diving into the shadows of an asteroid field, her half-complete stealth systems masking her heat signature. For days they hid, the crew whispering in the dark as alien patrols prowled outside. Then came the warships, great triangular leviathans, armored in silver, glowing with the power of suns. One strike would have annihilated the Revenant. Instead, The battered human ship ran again, her engines screaming, slipping just out of reach. Each time, they survived by inches. Each time, the crew grew harder, stronger. On the 73rd day since Earth's fall, Captain Vera stood before the survivors gathered in the cargo bay. Engineers, soldiers, civilians, children, every soul aboard the Revenant. The silence was heavy. He spoke. We have all lost everything. Our homes, our families, our world. The enemy believes us broken, finished. His voice was steady, though his heart trembled. But they are wrong. He paused, eyes sweeping over faces illuminated by dim lights. This ship may be incomplete. Our weapons may be few. But we are still here. We are the last spark of humanity. And sparks, when fanned, become fire. If they wish to hunt us, then let them know the cost. For every life they took, we will take theirs in return. For Earth, for the fallen, for humanity. The silence broke. A roar rose in the bay. Soldiers slammed fists against bulkheads. Children cheered with voices too fierce for their age. Civilians shouted, "For Earth," until the words echoed to the ship like thunder. It was not a speech of hope. It was a vow of vengeance. That night, the crew gathered in the darkened mess hall, where a single screen still flickered with fragments of Earth, old recordings of oceans, forests, and skies. Someone played an ancient song, crackling and distorted, yet beautiful. People wept quietly. Some laughed through tears. And in that moment, something unbreakable was forged. They were no longer just survivors. They were hunters. One ship against an empire. And humanity would not kneel. Wolves in the dark. The galaxy is vast, and yet there is no true hiding place. For the TSV Revenant, every star was a risk, every signal a potential death sentence. The alien empire, known by intercepted fragments as the Zeran Dominion, spread across thousands of systems. Their ships patrolled the void like predators, their fleets woven into an unbroken net. To survive was not simply to run, it was to vanish. And so, humanity became shadows. The first lessons were brutal. On the 91st day since Earth's fall, the Revenant limped into the wreckage field of a forgotten war, a graveyard of ships, alien hulls shattered, drifting among asteroids scarred from battles long past. The scanners came alive with ghostly echoes. Twisted hulls, broken reactors, gutted battleships of species humanity had never known. Civilizations erased before humankind had even taken to the stars. The Dominion had fought here. The Dominion had won. "Sir," whispered Ensign Kalen, the young sensor officer, "there's salvageable material. Hull plating, energy cells, maybe even weapons." Captain Elias Vera stared at the screen, then at the wreckage beyond. "Do it," he ordered. "Strip everything. If it works, weld it to the Revenant. If it doesn't, we'll make it work." And so began the first harvest. For weeks, engineers crawled across broken hulks and patched EVA suits, cutting free alien metal and dragging it back to the airlocks. Mechanics learned to weld foreign alloys to human bulkheads. Power cells, incompatible with Terran systems, were rewired with jury-rig converters. A gutted alien railgun, too large for its original mount, was bolted sideways along the Revenant's hull, its power source hacked into the battleship's reactors with the engineering crew swearing it would never fire without ripping the ship apart. And yet, against all odds, it did. Each day, the Revenant became something new. Less a human warship, more a chimera. Steel and fire, patched and reforged, a predator born from desperation. But predators need prey. The Dominion's patrols were everywhere. Great crescent-shaped frigates slipped between systems, scanning for heat signatures, ready to strike. The Revenant stealth systems, unfinished, untested, became their lifeline. By diverting power, venting heat into asteroid shadows, and masking their engine trails, they could vanish for days at a time. But they couldn't hide forever. Supplies dwindled. Ammunition was scarce. Every system screamed for replacement parts. It was Commander Lyra Anwin who said the words that changed everything. "We can't keep running," she told Vera in the war room, the glow of star maps flickering on their faces. "We need resources, and they'll never stop hunting us. If we wait for them to find us, we die." But if we strike first? Vera frowned. Strike? With one ship? One ship they don't expect, she countered. They think we're prey. That's our advantage. We hit fast, vanish faster. Hit them again where they're weakest. Make them bleed. The captain stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Wolves in the dark, he murmured. The first hunt came days later. A Dominion supply convoy drifted through the shadow of a red dwarf star. 3 cargo haulers, escorted by 2 light frigates. To the Dominion, it was routine. Nothing more than a movement of fuel cells and munitions. To the Revenant, it was survival. The crew prepared in silence. Engineers rerouted power to the railgun. Gunners whispered prayers over jury-rigged missile racks. Pilots slid into their fighters. Old Terran interceptors held together by patchwork repairs and sheer stubbornness. From the shadow of an asteroid belt, the Revenant struck. The railgun roared, a soundless flash in the void. It slugged toward the first frigate, shearing it in half before its shields even registered a threat. Fighters screamed from the bays, their engines flaring blue as they ripped into the second escort, missiles slamming against its hull. The convoy panicked. Cargo ships tried to scatter, engines blazing. But the Revenant was already moving, sliding from shadow to shadow, weapons flashing. When the battle ended, the Dominion frigates were wreckage. 2 of the cargo ships drifted crippled, their holds filled with desperately needed supplies. And the Revenant was gone, vanishing into the dark. News traveled. Whispers spread along the slave channels, passed in secret across Dominion control systems. Whispers of a human warship, a ghost that struck from the void, of Dominion patrols that never returned, of cargo convoys that vanished into nothing. The slaves began to hope, and the masters began to fear. But vengeance always carries a cost. The Dominion was not blind. Each attack brought more hunters. Patrols grew heavier, frigates replaced by cruisers, then destroyers. Entire sectors were locked down, fleets deployed to crush the phantom ship that haunted them. On the 146th day since Earth's fall, the Revenant nearly died, pinned against the gravity well of a dying star. 2 Dominion destroyers cornered her. Their beams tore across her hull, ripping through decks, venting fire into space. Fighters were shredded, drones obliterated. The ship screamed, alarms howling as compartments sealed, oxygen bled away, and crew died by the dozens. "Captain, we can't take another hit," shouted Amwin, blood running down her temple. Vera gritted his teeth, staring at the tactical map, then his eyes fixed on the star. "Take us closer," he ordered. "Closer? Sir, the gravity." "Now!" The Revenant dived, engines flaring as she plunged toward the unstable star. Gravity clawed at her hull, dragging her deeper. The destroyers followed, beams cutting through space. At the last possible moment, Vera gave the order. Dump the fuel cells. All of them. The engineers obeyed, venting massive containers of volatile fuel into the star's corona. The Dominion destroyers fired, beams lancing through the cloud. The star flared. The explosion ripped outward like the wrath of a god. Plasma fire consumed the destroyers, shields shattering, hulls melting as they were pulled into the gravity well. The Revenant clawed her way free, engines screaming, hull burning, systems failing. But she lived. When the silence returned, the crew of the Revenant knew. They were no longer just survivors. They were predators. And predators learned to hunt. From that day forward, the Revenant became a name spoken in hushed tones. To the Dominion, she was a ghost, a nightmare, a phantom that could not be caught. To the slaves of the galaxy, she was a spark of hope. One ship, one crew, wolves in the dark, sparks of rebellion. The galaxy had long since stopped believing in freedom. For millennia, the Zeran Dominion had ruled with iron claws and burning skies. Their fleets crushed resistance before it began, their governors enslaved entire species with brutal efficiency, and their propaganda ensured every subject world knew one simple truth: resistance is suicide. But then came the whispers. A single ship, a human warship, the last of a broken species. A phantom that struck convoys, shredded patrols, and vanished into the dark. The Dominion called it impossible. The slaves called to hope, and hope spreads faster than fire. The first rebellion was small. On a mining moon orbiting the gas giant Gorth, slaves toiled in toxic pits, digging minerals for the Dominion's shipyards. Most had long since forgotten their ancestral names. Their overseers were machines and whips. Their lifespans counted in years, not decades. But when news reached them, smuggled through underground channels, carried by smugglers who swore they had seen the human warship themselves, the slaves began to believe the unthinkable. One night, under the shrouded skies of the moon, a handful of miners turned their tools into weapons. Pickaxes became blades. Drills became spears. They fell upon their overseers, and for the first time in centuries, Dominion blood stained the mines. The rebellion was crushed within days. But before the last of the miners were executed, one shouted words that echoed across the sector. "The humans are fighting. So will we." Captain Elias Vera listened to the reports in silence aboard the Revenant. The crew had intercepted the Dominion's own broadcasts. The rebellion had failed, yes, but the message had spread. Dozens of worlds whispered of defiance. On slave ships, in labor camps, in factories where millions worked until their hands bled, the idea began to root. It was Commander Lyra Anwin who finally said what they were all thinking. "We started this," she whispered. "We didn't mean to, but we did. Every convoy we strike, every battle we survive, it tells a galaxy the Dominion isn't invincible. And now they're watching us." Vera's jaw tightened. He thought of Earth, of ash and silence. Then let them watch. The Revenant grew bolder. No longer content with convoys, they targeted slave transports. Dominion freighters filled with shackled workers were intercepted, their escorts gutted, their cargo bays cracked open. Chains were broken. The rescued slaves, alien species with scales, feathers, or skin of stone, stared in disbelief at the humans who freed them. "You fight them," one gasping freed slave said, his voice trembling. "With only one ship?" Vera nodded. "One ship. One crew. Enough." The freed wept, and then they took up arms. The Revenant had no space to keep them all, but wherever possible, she dropped them on hidden worlds, in asteroid colonies, or aboard repurposed Dominion vessels. Seeds of rebellion scattered across the stars. The Dominion's response was merciless. Entire sectors were purged. Planets suspected of aiding the Phantom ship were bombarded into glass. Populations were executed by the millions. The message was clear: help the humans, and you will burn. But fear did not kill the spark. It fanned it, because each world that burned cried out not in silence, but in rage. On the 212 days since Earth's fall, the Revenant scanners picked up a distress call. Not Dominion. Something else. A fleet of makeshift ships. Cargo haulers turned into warcraft, barely held together with scrap, was under assault. When the humans arrived, they found a flotilla of insectoid vessels locked in battle with a Dominion cruiser. The insectoid species, the THRYNN, were known as nothing more than docile slaves. But here they were, screaming in defiance, throwing their lives away in ramming strikes and suicidal charges. "Captain," said Anwin, eyes wide, "they're fighting back. Because of us." Vera's gaze hardened. "Then let's give them their first victory." The Revenant roared into the fray. Her patched railgun thundered, ripping into the Dominion cruiser. Fighters spilled from her bays, weaving between alien ships. The THRYNN, stunned to see the legendary human vessel fighting beside them, redoubled their efforts. Together, they destroyed the cruiser. For the first time in living memory, a slave fleet had triumphed. When the battle was over, the THRYNN sent a single message across the void: humanity fights. The THRYNN fight. Who else will rise? The spark became flame. Over the next weeks, uprisings erupted across Dominion space. On a Grill Prime, 1 billion slaves stormed the factories, overwhelming their overseers with sheer numbers. On Vadrax, a fleet of stolen transports rammed the Dominion garrison, crippling an entire sector supply line. On Ikora, an ancient species long thought cowed launched guerrilla strikes against Dominion patrols. Each rebellion was crushed eventually, but each left scars. Each drained Dominion fleets. Each proved that resistance was possible. And always, in the stories whispered by survivors, there was a constant refrain. The humans came. The humans fight. Humanity stands. But hope came with a price. The Dominion's high command could no longer ignore the threat. On the 243rd day, the Revenant intercepted a transmission, one that chilled the crew to their bones. By decree of the Overlord, the Terran vessel known as the Revenant is declared an abomination. It is to be destroyed at all costs. No fleet is too great, no price too high. The humans will be erased utterly. Moments later, long-range scans revealed the truth. A grand armada was mobilizing. Dozens of cruisers, carriers, battleships, an entire war fleet dedicated to one purpose: the annihilation of the last human ship. That night, the crew gathered in the cargo bay once more. They were tired, bloodied, scarred, but their eyes burned with fire. Vera stood before them, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. "They are coming for us," he said. "Not because we are strong, but because we are dangerous. Because we gave them something they cannot kill: hope." He let the silence linger, then raised his fist. "They think they will destroy us. But they are wrong. We are not just one ship anymore. Every rebellion, every uprising, they are our fleet. Every slave who raises a weapon is part of our war. And we will not stop until the Dominion burns." The roar that followed shook the decks. In that moment, the crew of a Revenant knew. The galaxy was no longer watching them as fugitives. The galaxy was watching them as leaders. And so the spark spread. From the ashes of Earth, from the darkness of slavery, from a void where hope had long been forgotten, flames rose. One ship against an empire. And the empire was starting to burn. The empire breaks. The Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. Their fleet spanned the stars, their war machines unmatched, their dominion unchallenged. Entire civilizations had bowed, chained, or been erased from history. No world had ever defied them and survived. Until now. And so they gathered their fury. The Grand Armada rose from the shipyards of a dozen sectors, dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers with wings of fighters like swarms of locusts, cruisers bristling with weapons capable of shattering moons. Their numbers blotted out the stars. All for one ship, the TSV Revenant. On the 300th day since Earth's fall, the human vessel received a transmission, a broadcast forced across every frequency, designed not just for the Revenant, but for every subject species of the galaxy. A Dominion warlord stood framed in shadows, eyes like molten iron. The human vermin believe themselves strong. They are wrong. Their ship will burn, their crew will be broken, their kind will be erased, and every slave who dares whisper their name will share their fate. The Dominion thought fear would silence rebellion. Instead, the opposite happened. Across the galaxy, slaves rose faster than ever before. Whole sectors ignited. Dominion forces, stretched thin, struggled to maintain order. Rebellions burned brighter with each passing day, and every whisper carried the same words: humanity stands. Humanity fights. But the Revenant could not outrun what was coming. Captain Elias Vera gathered his officers in the war room. The map was filled with red, the Armada's movements converging on one system, Vadrath Prime, the Dominion's throne world. "They're not just hunting us," Commander Lyra Anwin said. "They're making an example. They'll show the galaxy that even hope can be killed." Vera's eyes burned. "Then we kill their hope first." Silence. Then understanding. He wasn't talking about survival. He was talking about ending it. The plan was madness. The Revenant, battered and scarred, would strike the Dominion's throne world directly. They would lure the Armada into its own system, force the greatest fleet the galaxy had ever seen into a battle it could not ignore. The goal was not victory in the conventional sense. The Revenant could never destroy the Armada outright. But if they could cripple the Dominion's heart, ignite rebellion on its throne world, and show the galaxy that even the mighty Zirans could bleed, then the Empire would fracture. They all knew what it meant. Few expected to survive, but no one refused. The journey to Vadrath was silent. The crew wrote final letters, recorded messages, whispered prayers. Children aboard the ship were told stories of Earth, of oceans and skies they would never see. Soldiers sharpened their weapons. Pilots painted names of lost loved ones on their fighters. Engineers patched the ship one last time with scrap and sheer determination. When they arrived, the throne world filled their view. A colossal planet wrapped in silver spires and orbital fortresses. Fleets already arrayed around it like a shield. And waiting beyond the system's edge, the Grand Armada, 1,000,000 guns turned toward one ship. The battle began with fire. The Revenant dropped from FTL into the heart of the system, railguns roaring, missiles streaking like falling stars. Fighters screamed from her bays, interceptors weaving between capital ships, drones diving into enemy formations like kamikazes. The Armada responded with fury. Beams lanced across space, tearing through the Revenant's patched armor. Explosions ripped across her decks. Whole sections vented into the void. But the Revenant did not fall. She moved like a wolf among giants, darting through gaps, striking and vanishing, turning the Dominion's own size against them. The crew fought with the ferocity of extinction, because that was what it was. And then, just as planned, the spark caught. The throne world itself erupted. On the surface of Vadrath Prime, slaves who had waited centuries for a chance to rise stormed the streets. Factories turned into battlegrounds. Garrisons burned. Cities rebelled. The Dominion tried to crush them, but half their fleets were locked in combat with the Revenant. And worse, the uprising spread to the Armada itself. Slave crews aboard Dominion warships mutinied, seizing control of weapons, turning their guns on their masters. The Grand Armada fractured. What was meant to be a display of overwhelming power became chaos. But chaos is a cost. The Revenant bled. Explosions tore through her hull. The railgun was shattered. The fighter bays emptied. The engines burning with their last reserves. Casualties mounted by the minute. Entire decks were sealed, filled with fire and silence. On the bridge, alarm screamed. "Shields gone!" shouted Kalen. "Reactors overloading!" cried the engineers. "We got one shot left, Captain." Anwin's voice cut through the chaos. Vera stared at the map. The Dominion's flagship, a dreadnought the size of a mountain, loomed ahead, coordinating the battle, its signals holding the Armada together. If it fell, the fleet might collapse completely. He looked at his crew. Broken, bloodied, unyielding. "One last strike," he whispered, "for Earth." The Revenant turned toward the dreadnought. Every remaining weapon fired. Missiles streaked. Guns roared. Drones slammed themselves into enemy hulls. Fighters made suicide runs into the dreadnought's shields. The Revenant plunged forward, engines screaming, reactor burning hotter than it was ever meant to. The Dominion's flagship unleashed its fury. Beams ripped through the human vessel, tearing her apart piece by piece. Fire consumed the bridge. Corridors collapsed. Screams echoed. But still she flew. Vera gave the final order. Overload the core. Ram them. The Revenant hurled herself into the dreadnought, reactors detonating in a blinding explosion that tore through shields, hull, and heart. The Dominion's flagship shattered, a sun blooming in its place. The Armada broke. Without command, without unity, the great fleet collapsed into chaos. Slave crews seized ships. Rebels surged across the throne world. The Dominion, unthinkably, impossibly, fell. And through it all, one name echoed across the stars. The Revenant. When the smoke cleared, there was no trace of the human warship. Some said fragments of her hull drifted forever among the wreckage. Others claimed her crew lived on, scattered among the freed fleets, continuing the fight in 1,000 smaller ways. Many believed she died completely. Her sacrifice to spark that broken empire. But to the galaxy, it did not matter. The legend lived. Slaves rose and became citizens. Worlds once chained stood free. And in every rebellion that followed, in every uprising, in every whispered story told to children beneath strange alien skies, the same words were spoken. Humanity was broken. Humanity was beaten. Humanity was ash. But one ship stood. One ship fought. One ship proved that empires can fall. And so the galaxy remembered. Not Earth, Not the Terran Union. Not even Captain Elias Vera or his crew. They remembered the Revenant, the human warship that faced an empire and won.